Hebrews 10:19-39. Therefore, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which he consecrated for us, through the veil, that is his flesh, and having a great high priest over the house of God, the writer unfolds the climactic reality of what has already been accomplished. The language is that of access, immediate, unhindered, and complete. No longer does the worshiper stand at a distance, dependent upon repeated sacrifices and mediated rituals. The veil, once a barrier within the earthly sanctuary, is identified with his flesh, and in his offering, that barrier has been removed. What stood between God and man under the former arrangement has been taken away, not symbolically, but decisively. The way is not merely opened, it is living. It is not a path that must be maintained through continual observance, but one established in the once-for-all act of the Son. The exhortation to draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith rests entirely upon this finished work. Hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and bodies washed with pure water speak not of ongoing ceremonies, but of a completed purification. The conscience, once burdened under the weight of continual remembrance of sins, has been cleansed. There is no further offering to be made, no additional cleansing required. The assurance is not grounded in human constancy, but in the faithfulness of the one who promised. To hold fast the confession of hope without wavering is anchored in that same faithfulness. The hope in view is not uncertain or distant, but tied to what had been promised and was then at hand for that audience. The faithfulness of God guarantees the certainty of what he declared, and the community is called to remain steadfast in light of that nearness. The mention of provoking one another to love and good works, and not forsaking the assembling together, arises in the context of a people standing at the threshold of a great transition. The day was approaching, a day anticipated within their generation, connected to the fulfillment of covenantal promises and the passing away of what was old. Their gathering was not merely for encouragement in a general sense, but as a testimony to what was unfolding in their time. The warning that follows must be read within that same framework. If one were to sin willfully after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there remained no more sacrifice for sins. This is not a statement about moral failure in general, but about a decisive rejection of the sufficiency of the once-for-all sacrifice. To turn away from that offering is not to fall back into a system that can still provide atonement, for that system was passing away. There is no alternative sacrifice remaining, only the reality of judgment tied to that fading order. The imagery of fiery indignation and adversaries draws upon covenantal language long established in the scriptures. It reflects the consequences associated with rejecting God's provision, particularly in a time when that provision had reached its fulfillment. The comparison to those who despised the law of Moses and died without mercy underscores the severity, yet the greater accountability now rests upon those who would trample underfoot the Son of God, count the blood of the covenant as common, and insult the Spirit of grace. The gravity lies in rejecting what is final and complete. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, and the Lord will judge his people, are citations rooted in covenantal judgment, now brought into sharp focus as that long-anticipated day drew near. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God, particularly in the context of resisting what he had definitively established. Yet the writer turns to remembrance. The former days, in which they endured great conflict and suffering, are set forth as evidence of their participation in this unfolding reality. They had been made a spectacle, shared in the sufferings of others, and accepted the plundering of their goods with joy, knowing they possessed something better and enduring. Their perspective had already been shaped by the certainty of what was coming. Therefore, the call not to cast away confidence is grounded in the promise of reward, not as something earned through persistence, but as the realization of what had been assured. You have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. The endurance spoken of is not indefinite, but tied to a specific and imminent expectation. For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come and will not tarry. The language is urgent, immediate, and directed to that audience. The coming in view is not removed by centuries, but anticipated within a short span. The just shall live by faith, and if anyone draws back, God has no pleasure in him. Faith here is the steadfast trust in what had been promised and was about to be revealed in fullness. The closing affirmation is one of confidence. We are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul. The contrast is between retreating into what was vanishing and pressing forward into what had been secured. The salvation of the soul is not presented as a distant hope, but as the realized outcome of faith in what had been accomplished and was then being brought to its visible completion. Thus, the passage stands as a declaration of completed access, a warning against abandoning the sufficiency of that completion, and an encouragement rooted in the nearness of fulfillment.